Welcome to a very special episode of the Challenge Insiders here on Reality Pop. I am joined by my fellow challenge experts, Drew and Chantelle, and we're here to talk about Survivor 41. We've been watching it the whole season, behind the scenes. Chantelle, I know, has been talking about it on her own channel on Reality Realness, so if you haven't checked out any of her recaps, they should still all be valid. You can go back and rewatch the season, go watch some of the recaps that she did with her own co-hosts on there. I haven't had the opportunity to listen to it yet, Chantelle, so I'm coming into this very fresh, and I'm very interested to see what your takes on it is for this season. And the same for Drew. I know Drew did a little bit of Survivor 41 recaps towards the beginning of the season. It ended up being quite a lot of work, especially since he's been so generous with his time jumping on these podcasts, talking about the challenge. But Drew's here as well to talk about Survivor 41. And we'll start with Chantelle. Chantelle, how have you been since Friday evening when we spoke? What was Christmas like? And did you get any great gifts?
Chantelle, how have you been?
Oh, shoot. I totally have
Christmas like.
Wait, how do we get rid of this? That's hilarious. So basically, my phone was hooked up to my speaker, and I guess I had it on this to start live, and so that's hilarious. Okay, well, that's gone now. Introduction.
New phone for Christmas? Was that it?
New phone for Christmas. Old phone. Actually, what I gave myself for Christmas was watching the entire Australian Survivor, Brains versus Brawn, season 6. I watched the whole thing in its entirety for the last 4 days or so. So I recently just finished it a couple hours ago, and that's going to actually really draw into my perspective here when we talk about season 41, because before I watched that season, I had kind of a different opinion of season 41. And now after, I have a completely different perspective of Survivor 41. So I think it'll be interesting with me having this new perspective on this game, just because I had a new influence with this new other Survivor game. So I'm excited to talk to you about it, especially you, Chris, because you are, the international Survivor savant. And
Survivor what?
And I definitely want to hear a little bit of the comparisons. I find that to be really interesting. And that's kind of one of the directions that I'm probably going to go with my perspective, is that I like old school Survivor. I like people playing the game. And just loosely, I felt as though how Survivor Drop the 4, Keep the 1 was playing kind of went away from what I love about Survivor. Now, I always will love Survivor. I do think it's one of the most fantastic games of our generation. I think it's fantastic. In all, it's kind of like pizza, every game of Survivor is pretty good. Just some are a little bit better than others. But I think that we're gonna have an interesting conversation. Just
Yeah.
To twist or not to twist? That is the question.
I'm really excited to talk about Survivor 41 through the lens of having seen both Australian Survivor and Survivor South Africa this year, because I know, Chantelle, you've also watched both those international seasons, and really interested to get a feel from you as to, if you had to rank the 3 seasons, the 3 English-speaking seasons, which season would you rank at the top, which season would you rank at the middle, and which season would you rank at the bottom? So if I forget to talk about that a little bit later on, hopefully we can talk about it towards the end of this podcast, because I don't want you to get into it right at the start here before we get to introduce our other specialist here on the panel, Drew. It's been a whole weekend since we spoke. What was Christmas like, and did you get any special gifts over the weekend?
Christmas was good. It was a really fun day. Just spent it with the family. It was fun. I got to play Play-Doh for the first time in years with my little niece, and I got a few things that will help with videos and podcasting. I got a second camera, so I'm trying to do a double camera format when I'm filming. So I like to throw it to a different camera for different angles. So I'm going to be playing around with that with the new content that's coming out in January. I'm not gonna lie. I'm happy that Chantelle kicked it off with how she felt, because to me, I feel the same way. So I think we're gonna be seeing a little bit eye to eye on this Survivor season. But I'm on a different wavelength here, because normally when I'm on a guest hosting spot on these podcasts, it's because of my expertise in a certain field, which is the challenge. Now I'm a more casual viewer, and I feel like I'm gonna take a backseat role here, and I'm gonna be just saying my very, very amateur-ish kind of like comments about the season and being like, oh, I like this person, but maybe not this person kind of thing. It's not going to be like I'm digging back to like 16 years or 16 seasons of a show to pull out some stats or whatever. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
Well, it sounds like, you're on the spot that I'm normally on if I had to talk about like all the old school challenge seasons and going on All Stars being sometimes definitely over over in my head. Like I go in there and I'm like, man, I wish I knew as much as you guys about how some of these old school players played before they came in. It would have helped me definitely in my draft picks because I mean, I've got 0 people left for the rest of the season, but still it's a lot of fun. We like to keep it casual here. So don't worry about it. I'm sure your opinions are just as valid because Drew, it is season 41. Drop the 4, keep the 1. It is a new generation. So the previous 40 seasons does not matter. Okay. It's all about this season on this review. And I want to start off with, guys, it was quite a long time that we did not have Survivor, nearly 2 years of no Survivor. Everybody was really anticipating it. If you were a US Survivor fan and you didn't watch any of the international Survivor, it was a long period here. Was the wait ultimately worth it for you, Chantelle, when they came back here this season? Do you feel like, if you had to give it a score out of 10, where would you score the comeback season here for Survivor 41?
It's really hard to say because I don't want people to think that I didn't enjoy the fact that it came back and that I wasn't appreciative of the fact that we were getting US Survivor. But I'd have to give it, I think it's a bottom tier season personally. I think the cast was fantastic, but I don't know if they allowed the cast to play to their potential this season, just with all the twists and turns that they were trying to do to make it exciting, to make it the new era, to the monster, all this stuff. I think it actually overshadowed the beauty of these people playing this game. And so because a lot of the season became more about people reading a piece of parchment paper and like going off to an island to have a dilemma that's not really that much of a dilemma. I'm going to probably give it, I was so excited for Survivor. I was excited. When I was excited for Survivor, I was giving it a 10. I was like, whatever it is, it's amazing. I love this. I'm so excited to see Survivor. So I give it a 10. And then after the season, maybe a 4. I think I'm going to give it a 4.
So, Drew, when Jeff looked at the camera in the beginning of the season, he said, we missed you. How much did you miss him and Survivor? Where would you rate this season of Survivor 41?
So I'm in the boat where I didn't watch any Survivor content. Like I didn't watch any of the other iterations from other countries. So, I mean, I was in a drought. But during season 40, I was watching a ton of older seasons in the middle of the waiting per episode. So I was watching a ton of Survivor. So when season 40 ended, I was like, all right, I'm good with Survivor for a while. Like I'll wait till 41. And then 41 came like 2 years later. But with it coming back, I was excited because it was the first Survivor season in a while. Man, when Jeff was talking to the camera, I was like, what is this? Blues Clues? Like, what is happening here? Like, I get where they were coming from, but I really do think that I agree with Chantelle that the cast seemed really cool and really interesting and really wanting to play and was really itching to play. But when it came down to it, I felt like the twist was overshadowing, the format was overshadowing the actual gameplay, which I think we complain about with the challenge being like, oh, we're seeing too much of the spy theme. We're seeing too much of explosions. We just want a fun-filled game that we just want to see the players play. And I felt like there was more times where I was finding myself talking about, can you believe this twist? Can you believe that Deshaun is having to play deal or no deal with a box and see if he stays in the game? Did you see that hourglass kind of thing? It's like, instead of actually talking about, did you see this move that Xander made, or Evie did this, or something to that effect? So right now I'm going to be tentative and say 5, because I don't know where this would, like, I don't know where this will land further down the line or anything. So I'm going to do a tentative 5, but I just don't know if it can go higher. I'm hoping that something changes for the next season, though.
Yeah, and listen, I was, when you put a blanket rule, where do you rank it out of 10? It makes it hard because you got to take everything into consideration. You got to look at some of the other seasons that were shown. One of the things for me that is quite interesting is obviously there was a massive drop in ratings this season. They started off with 7 million people watching, ended with 5 million people, I believe, towards the end of the season. So they lost 2 million people in the course of the season, which is pretty significant. And some people will come back and say it still won its time slot on the Wednesday evening time slot. But it is warning signs when you see 2 million people leave. And a lot of that, I don't know how much we're going to get into it, but let's get into it. We're the Challenge Insiders. We talk about everything, even the controversial stuff. A lot of it was people saying that the show was too woke and that maybe that's why some people left this season. Me personally, I'm off the camp that, yes, it would have had an effect, I'm sure. I know America politically is quite polarized at the moment, and we're not going to talk about politics here. We're not going to choose a side. We're just going to look at the facts, right, of what happened this season. And looking at it, it could have played into that. But I also think that, Drew, you kind of hit the nail on the head with all the twists. The first half of the season was players explaining twists to us more than us actually getting to know the players interacting on the beach. Or we saw one of the things that I really enjoy from Australian Survivor is getting those packages from players from home, getting to know who the player is outside of the game, which I think it was hit and miss for some fans of the US show that have been used to how the show's been edited for so long. I still think it was a good thing, but the problem was we saw that and we saw the twists being explained opposed to seeing players interact and getting great human moments before the merge. And, Chantelle, if you look at this season, how much of this, to put you a little bit in the hot seat here, do you think was down to the fact that maybe the show was being too woke? There was the Common in Guys controversy in the beginning. A lot of people... Yeah, Coming In Guys, which was a controversy in the beginning. Yeah, how much do you think it was really that opposed to just the show trying to do too much too early here and it just losing people early because they just didn't get to know the characters in the beginning part? Because after the merge, we got to know them a lot better, but I felt like it was so twist heavy in the beginning with reading clues that it kind of took away from camp life.
I think what is happening is people aren't enjoying Survivor like they used to. And so they're trying to figure out what it is, right? They're like, well, is it because they're doing this? Or is it because they're doing this? Because whatever the whole combination of everything that they've been doing this season, not everybody's really enjoying it. So sure, I did find that the Come On In Guys was performative. Just change it. Like, you don't need to say, hey guys, what do you think? Look how woke I am. What, do you think I should change it? And Evie says, I'm fine with not changing it. And then, next episode, Ricard's like, actually, I would think that I would feel more included if you changed it. Like, that didn't
so
need
unfair.
To be
So unfair on Ricard, by the way, for Jeff to put that pressure, because Ricard was the person that a lot of the mob who did not like the fact that it was changed, they came after him this season for that. And it's so unfair for a host like Jeff Probst, who's been doing this for 40 plus seasons. He's got a certain aura about him, right? Where people want to please Jeff, and they probably could have felt like Jeff was disappointed that Evie didn't give him what he wanted. And Ricard, thinking about it, getting in his head, you've only got time out there on the island, thinking about how he was going to be perceived with his close circle of friends. He went back and said that, and a lot of people hated on Ricard for that. But for me, this should be more of a blame on Jeff, because if he didn't make it an issue, it would not have been an issue early in this season, right, Chantelle?
Absolutely. If he just started the season being like, come on in, I don't think any people might notice. And then maybe in an interview, Jeff could be like, well, we want to be more inclusive and we didn't want to, alienate anybody that, is non-binary or whatnot. And so if he just had not been performative about it, I think that people wouldn't have been upset with it. People might notice, but they wouldn't have been like, think it's like some sort of political stance that the show is taking and Ricard saying something to change the climate of the show. So like that, for instance, is I think that the show did a disservice to the player by putting them in a position where they might be looked at in a certain type of way for having a specific belief or a view. In terms of like all the increase of diversity and the amount of conversations around diversity, well, that's going to happen when you have a diverse cast. So if they didn't keep on saying like, this is the most diverse cast we've ever seen, like so many diverse people, like if that wasn't something that we were showcasing and being a little bit performative about, if it was just natural and every day to have like this diverse cast, then we wouldn't be surprised by having conversations about diversity. So I think that because the show is trying to present itself of being like, look, we have more than 50% of the players are going to be diverse. Oh, we're going to make sure that we're going to be more inclusive in our language with pronouns, etc., on how we're addressing the players on the show. But they're showing that this is what they're doing. And then on top of that, they're doing all these twists and changing the way the game goes, and then they're having these packages about these people. Like, it's just too much. And then people are not enjoying it, and they're just trying to figure out what is it that I'm not enjoying.
Yeah. For me, Drew, the cast was, Chantelle brings up some great points about the fact that this was the most diverse cast, but I want to go further than just the color of their skin, the background of where they're coming from. They were diverse in personality. They were diverse in, like I felt early in the season when I came onto the Survivor Buffs as a guest, I said this was one of the casts that I felt like I could relate to the most, which is interesting because they're a lot more diverse than some previous seasons. You would expect me, to, I guess, relate more to old casts that weren't as diverse. But I liked, like, for instance, JD was one of the people that I related to so much. Like, I mean, he just seemed like he is a big nerd, he's loves his comic books, loves Survivor, the kind of person I could talk to and have great conversations with. Like, I could see myself and JD be mates outside of this game, so and I just loved his energy. He was a big character early on, but the cast for me is probably, if I had to rank the show, and I haven't given my ranking yet, you guys were pretty low on it. I probably would think 5, I'd maybe push it up to a 6 based on the cast alone, because I actually really enjoyed this cast. The twists and the overproducedness of the show took away from it. But what did you think of this cast and, how they played this season? I mean, obviously, like we said early in the season, it was hard to get to know them. One of the comments here, the hangout room says that he only got to know Chantelle early on because of the naughty song that she had in her head every time she did something evil. But what did you think of the cast as a whole this season, Drew?
I thought it was a great cast. I thought anybody could see themselves in this cast or see themselves being friends or knowing somebody that is like somebody on this cast. I thought that they did a great job. First of all, everybody was a fan of Survivor. Everybody came to play. Everybody wanted to do something. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And yeah, JD was a player that I was very much excited to see every time he was on the screen. Chantelle was the same way. I mean, there were so many players that I was like, yes, give me more screen time. But when it came down to like a twist or walking up a hill for 2 episodes in a row for over 20 minutes, and it's like, all right, I think I understand where we're going with this. Is it going to be different? No, it's not different. It's the wheel at the bottom. It's like, all right, it's kind of getting predictable. We need to swerve and do something else, or not have it be a hill going up and down, or figure out a different way for these dilemmas. But for the cast, I was the most excited about this cast. I mean, even more excited than the past few seasons cast, because of how infectious everybody's like personalities were and how different everybody's personalities were, and just wanting to see them interact. But we didn't even get to see the Blue Tribe for like the whole time up until the merge, because they never went to Tribe, or they never were showcased. So it was just like everything else, we leaned into UA, or we leaned into the Yellow Tribe, which I can't remember the name is, because they were having so many troubles. And so I felt like I was getting to know them more, but the more I got to know them, the more they left, because they kept on going to Tribal. So I kept on being like, I like these players, but I can't be invested in them because they're leaving over and over and over again. And then they're dwindling. And then we got the Blue Tribe more, but it was like I didn't know them for half the game. So it was a little frustrating with how the editing was. And I blame the twist, but I also blame how quick the gameplay was. With 26 episodes, they have to make storylines, they have to hurry up with the editing, and they kind of have to have something going on every single episode. So there's a lot at play here, but I thought the cast was really, really good.
Now, you brought up an interesting point about the summit twist, where they had to go up the summit, they do the walk, they had the wheel, that they had to choose to either risk their vote or not play the game. Now, for me personally, it was one of the twists. If you had to ask me, which one of the twists would you see come back again? There's a lot of them that I wouldn't want to see this from the season come back again.
All of them.
I know, they're all coming back for 42, and that's scary, because Jeff did not have the opportunity to gauge the fan reception, and he doesn't actually care about the fan reception. I think Jeff has long since he's starting to bring these twists in to entertain himself on the island, like butterflies, dead relatives, things like that, to have a laugh at the castaways at their expense. That's for Jeff more so than the viewers, in my opinion. He's like, I'm getting bored. I've done this for 40 seasons. I want to be entertained. Dance for me, puppet. And that's what he does with some of these twists that he brings in. But I want to go back to the wheel twist, and we'll definitely get into some of the other twists as well. You either play, you risk your vote, or you don't risk your vote. I can see how a lot of people won't like the twist because it takes away from camp life, similar to how, Edge of Extinction did. And a lot of us didn't like Edge of Extinction because we couldn't see camp life and strategy and people socializing, which it absolutely baffles my mind that Jeff has forgotten it's a social game and people want to see social interactions. You can put 16 people on the island 50 times. They're going to do different things in different scenarios. You don't need to manufacture scenarios. There will be different outcomes. These players have all seen 40 plus seasons now. They're capable players that you don't need to manufacture this, in my opinion. They would play the game. But to get back to that twist, the good thing we did see here, Chantelle, with this twist is that it allowed for the tribes not to be swapped before the merge. And tribe swaps used to be something that was exciting back in the day, but it has long become, in my opinion, a little bit predictable and boring, and good players sometimes get screwed out of a good spot in the game. And, game bots have figured out how to play with a tribe swap. This time, that tribe swap did not come. So the only opportunity that you had to create relationships on other tribes was on this summit journey, which made it a very important journey as well. So for me, I don't know if it was the way that it was edited or if we didn't have the right amount of screen time. We focused too much on the climb opposed to the interactions, or too much time reading the clue as to what the advantage is going to do when they get it. But I think that twist in itself is one that I don't think is completely broken. I don't think we need to throw it to the side at this point. I think it's something that, if I had to endorse a twist from this season, for me, this was one of the lesser evils.
Okay, I don't mind the opportunity to meet with another tribe, like a person cast away from another tribe, going on this summit. I didn't think that the prisoner's dilemma wasn't really that big of a dilemma, because most people that had gone to tribal council needed to have their votes available, so that, because they're such small tribes, most people are not going to want to risk their vote for the fact, like, if they lose on this prisoner's dilemma. So they kind of end up negotiating, which I think was useful later on in the game. It's like, oh, like, I let you have that advantage because I didn't risk my vote. And so it wasn't an opportunity to build some bonds with some other people. So I did enjoy it in that way. But I also don't particularly love having three small tribes, right? Because especially with people losing their vote for finding a beware advantage, so they can't have a vote, they don't have an idol. It just, to me, it didn't land as like seeing the strategy with 5 players that can vote and one that went off and kept their vote, like, so they can get off one player. I don't know. So I'm not really that big of a fan of a 666 tribe thing. If we didn't start from a bigger tribe where we got to get to know people a little bit better and then go down to 666, the whole beginning of it didn't really land for me. I liked maybe the first episode of it, and then I was like, okay, are we going to shake this up? Or like, are we going to go 555 and 444, like keep on mixing it up or something? I wasn't a fan of allowing certain tribes to be completely decimated and not having a shake up before we got to the merge. And then the shake up was a lie, as Danny would say. So I don't mind the summit, but it's not that great,
Drew, yeah, I hear you on that, and I mean, I can see how there's a case for it, and there's potentially not a case. I don't want to see that twist every season, but I like it when they do one or two things to shake up the game a little bit before the merge, and I thought that did its job by there being no merge, as an opportunity for players, like I said, to talk to each other across tribes and things like that as well, and you have to trust someone you've really only gotten to meet at the summit. So I thought it was intriguing to a certain point. Adrian here, Drew, says that the shot in the dark is honestly the best twist the season because of the part of chance and luck. I just wish more people in capitals would have guts to play it. What was your take on the shot in the dark twist this season?
I think it was fine. I think, like the commenter said, that it wasn't used a whole lot. So I don't know what to make of it. I mean, it was used sparingly. I don't think it worked out for anybody, but I did like the chance to have it. I mean, it's nice that everybody had a shot to use it. I just didn't understand like the symbolism, I guess, of the dice. Like if it was like more of a D&D roll where you like actually had to use the dice to roll it to get a certain number to get the shot in the dark, but to just put it in a box and then pull out a piece of paper and like
Yeah, it
pray
wasn't
that
visual.
you got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was weird. If you're going to endorse the summit, I'm want to like throw my hat to like get rid of that stupid beware advantage for the idols. That was so dumb. I hated that. I hated that so much. It just made nobody wants to idol hunt. I mean, for somebody to find something, be like, yeah, I'm gonna try to play this, and then have to rely on the other tribes, where one tribe doesn't even have to go to tribal council for the whole time. So why would they even look? Like they could look, but really it doesn't even matter. I would like, instead of that, to go back to what I don't know if it was Game Changers or whatever it was, but to find a clue for the hidden immunity idol that's like out in the open. Like to me, that was a better twist of like, oh, I have to like make a big move to try to figure out a way to get this idol in the middle of a challenge in front of everybody who could just like turn around and look at me going, oh, this dude is getting an idol, instead of having to say like the butterflies flies at midnight because the broccoli is green. It's like, okay, that dude has something. Let's just vote him out. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just hated that so
It
much.
did make for one of the in my opinion, one of the best. Like, I don't endorse the twist, so I'm saying this very reluctantly. I don't like the beware advantage. I don't like the phrases being said. To me, it was corny. Some people might have liked it. I just thought it was stupid, in my opinion. And Jeff did it to entertain himself. But it did make for one of the great moments in the show in editing. And I like the way that they kind of edited this when everybody was saying their phrase, and then suddenly Nasir said it right at the end, and it flashes back to him finding it, which I thought was a brilliant moment within the show. And I was shocked, and I kind of had an opportunity to feel what it would feel like to be on the show, being shocked by one of the players. And it was a masterful bit of editing on that part. But overall, I agree with you. The one good thing that this twist did bring in, we've been complaining, Chantelle, for seasons now, that, and you've seen Australian Survivor, you know how many idols find its way into the Australian Survivor game. We've been complaining for a long, long time that there's too many idols in the game and it messes up. At least one thing this season, there was only 3 idols, and it was only the Beware Advantage idols that were found, and nobody else found an idol outside of that. So all of the idols were found before the merge. That was one, I guess, good thing that happened from this, but it was replaced by a bunch of other craziness and random twists coming into the game.
Well, I just want to go back to the shot in the dark. I think the reason why it wasn't used more often was that you didn't get a vote when you were to participate in taking that risk. So the risk of 17% that you might be able to get it, and I guess, pick the right scroll or whatever, wasn't worth the risk of not having your vote to be able to help you in such a small tribe. If it was in a bigger tribe, I think that most likely people would take that chance because their number wouldn't have mattered that much. But if you have like 3 people on your tribe, 4 people on your tribe, you're not going to take that shot in the dark, because you literally could send yourself home if you were to take that chance of the shot in the dark. And chances are you're not going to actually get safety. So I think they didn't really think out that plan of the shot in the dark. If they got to keep their vote, then that would be, I think more people would have used it. But the fact that they had to lose their vote, I think that completely nullified that being an opportunity to use, because the tribes were so small. And what was you were talking about? What was the other question?
Yeah, so the other part that I was talking about is the crazy phrases. And Adrienne says that, well, there's about to be more phrases. Next season will be potatoes have skins, I've skin, and I'm a potato. And Christina says, beware advantage for the idol messed up Xander's game, to be honest. And there was one point early in the season, Chantelle, where I almost wondered when Xander would ever get his vote back, and what would have happened if the other 2 did not find the idol until the merge. Would he have not had a vote? And after the merge, like, was there any time that they explained that he would get his vote back?
I think that the idol would have either been nullified if he made it to merge, and he'd get his vote back with no idol. I think that's what it was.
Merge, happened. Yeah, on the post thing it says merge. He would get his vote back, whether he found the idol or not.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I spoke about Chantelle. I mentioned that with the beware advantage and the idols, there were only 3 idols in this game, and a lot of us complain sometimes that there's too many idols in the game. Not Justin though. Justin wants more idols. Justin, go watch Survivor Australia. You'd love it. There's idol
okay,
galore.
I'm gonna say from someone that does not like twists, that does not like idols, all these things. What I do like about idols specifically is now everybody knows that there's a possibility of them being in the game, so that they're already thinking and strategizing around there being a possibility of an idol. So I don't mind there be multiple just regular hidden immunity idols that keep on getting re-entered into the game, because people are aware that they exist and that they can maneuver around them. So it's not necessarily the idols that annoy me. It's like all these other twists that people aren't aware of, that they can't strategize around, and they just get like sideswiped by a twist. Idol nullifier. Oh, steal your idol. Like it's just that's not.
You
fun.
win an immunity and it does not count.
Oh, don't even get me. We'll get there. That was like infuriating for me. I was like so angry those 2 episodes. I mean, they made it up for it in the second episode, but like that first episode, I was like, anger. But I think that, with the fact that all 3 of these idols were never really played, I guess Xander's the only one that ended up playing his near the end. Everybody went out with these idols. It shows you that the idols don't make what's interesting in the game. It's how people use the idols that are interesting. Mm-hmm. And I know we were talking about Survivor US, but I have to say with Survivor Australia, they use these idols to their advantage. They dangle them like threats all over the place. Like they do not just like, oh, I'm safe, I'm going to keep it for myself. Like they threaten them. They use them in such a way that it completely shows their strategy around it. And it definitely makes me be like, I want to see her find an idol. Like I want to see what she does with it, because it's not just like, oh, I'm going to keep it quiet and like save it for myself when I think I'm in danger. No, they use these advantages. So maybe Americans don't, or North Americans don't use advantages well. Maybe that's the problem.
Well, I'm going to go. Here I am, the international one, coming to the defense of the North Americans. But, for me, I look at it this way. It's that there's too many twists in the game. Now, when you get something like the knowledge is power advantage, what is the advantage for you as a person who's found the idol to let people know that you've got an idol? Because if you've watched this season, next season, more people are going to be quiet about it. Less people are going to want to play aggressively. You've got the idol nullifier that could, potentially pop its head out. There's a bunch of things that are in the game that disincentivize different people that play the game in the US version of the show to actually be balls to the wall, do some of these things, because there's just too many different twists, Drew, that are coming into the game at the moment that are counteracting the fact that you've got an idol, and that could make for exciting gameplay in the way that you could use it to create alliances or, extort someone. It really is counterproductive after a while, and there's a diminishing return from having all of these different twists in the game.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to come back to what you said earlier about Jeff is bored and Jeff wants to see these players do something. To me, I feel like now hearing us talk about it and thinking back to my limited knowledge, because I only watched each episode once at certain points. Past episode 3, I only watched it once. It feels as though I've seen more of Jeff this episode and heard him talk to us more than anything than in the past few seasons combined. I always felt like Jeff was the kind of guy that was just like keeping everybody in the barrier, kind of like giving everybody what the instructions were. He would start out the conversations at tribal council, but he wouldn't like push people to do, like he would just like say a thing and then everything would go off. Like that would be the kind of host I liked him to be, and it kind of was conducive to the game because I felt like they were putting the players forward. Here, I felt like he was putting himself forward a lot more. Like we start out with him on this long journey being like, this is a beware advantage. We're putting this here. I missed you guys. While everybody's walking in, he's saying like, you can't, these guys don't know what they're going to be walking into. It's going to be crazy. He's giving people hourglasses to smash, and it's taking like 10 minutes to explain what the hourglass is going to do. And it just felt like he wanted more. He wanted to be like look, I've done 40 of these. I kind of want my time in the sun. I mean, everybody else, Sandra's getting her time. Boston Rob has done like 18 of these, but I've been on every single season. I want my time to like show off, like, oh, look at this twist. I came up with this twist. Hey, everybody, go to this website and put this phrase into the thing. And I don't know what that does. There was some that confused me. I'm not gonna lie.
And Jeff
I had
really
to go back and stop it.
and you've hit the nail on the head because Jeff really wants to be liked by the fans, right? So he keeps bringing up these twists. The fans keep hitting back on it. And Jeff has got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Like, I would never forget, Chantelle, you may or may not have seen this, the interview that Rob has a podcast, Rob Cisternino, did with Jeff before Survivor 40, where Jeff asked Rob if he liked him. And it was almost like Jeff thought, oh, no, Rob doesn't like me, where I think Rob has got, I don't know Rob personally. I know you know him a lot better than me because you've been on his show. But, I think Rob has got so much respect for Jeff. And it just shows that Jeff is someone that, he really has a bit of a chip on his shoulder at the moment. So he's trying to overcompensate and do different things on the show to get the fans to love him again or what he's doing to the show. Because to me, I feel like he's a great host, but creatively, he's not adding to the show. I would take him out of the creative direction of the twists, get someone else in, get someone like a previous player that's good at the game. Like, I don't dislike Boston Rob that much. Get Boston Robin to bring game theory in and bring different twists in, or get Adam Klein, who's not afraid to do crazy things in Winners at War, like try and get an idol in front of everyone. Like, get other people in there to have some fresh ideas, in my opinion, at this stage.
Well, what if we workshop that? And maybe he needs to play test some of these twists that he wants to have into the game. Like have some of former survivors be like the people that he tries the little mini version of these games of, so he can have like a little test, season where he can see what works and what people like and what people don't like. In every aspect of the creative industry, things get tested with audiences, not with the actual show. There's always focus groups. There's always seeing what works, what people like, what people don't like. And I heard through the grapevine that that Jeff said that he wasn't going to be continuing on with the show if he didn't have more creative capabilities within the show. And so he wants to be there. He wants to be more of the guy. Like he's the monster. They never even finished explaining that. But I think Jeff is the monster. Even though they didn't actually complete that entire twist. Like, okay, so who's the monster? Where's the monster coming from? But I think it's Jeff.
Yeah. So I think good points there, Drew, in regards to Jeff and where the show's going at the moment with him. But before we get into the merge part of the game, I do want to finish off with the pre-merge section of the game. We've talked about some of the twists that came up. What did we think of the players here that left pre-merge? Was there anybody, Chantelle, for you that stood out as a player? Like if we had to give someone a shot at playing the game again in a second chance season, who were the unlucky players that did not make it, players that did not make it for you all the way to the merge and could have been a massive character this season?
Well, I don't know if they could actually have done any better than they did, but I would have liked to see more Brad. He was just like, who is this guy? He was such a character. It would have been nice if he was in a bigger tribe where he would have been able to maybe hide a little bit more. Like the fact that he was him or was it Jeannie at that round? Like I can't remember the order of things right now, but like, there wasn't a lot of room for him to get around, the strategy of it and like around the other players that were there. And so it was just a lot harder for players like him to be able to shine. And so if there was only like 2 tribes in the beginning, he might still have gone out for a second or third. It's possible. But I think that he would have had an opportunity to be more endeared to certain people and maybe get a little bit of an alliance and maybe be part of like a voting block or something like that. He might have been able to last a little bit longer. And then once you get to the merge, I don't think he's as big of a threat. So I would like to see Brad play again. There's probably other people, but he is the first person that came to mind.
I like that nomination. I was a big Brad fan before the merge. He gave me Tony Chaos vibes early in the season, like in a different season, maybe in Kage-Yan. Who knows? He might have gone a lot deeper if he had a Trish in the game that could have sort of kept him straight. And he tried to look for that person. He tried to get in an alliance with Jenny, tried to get in an alliance with Shan. Didn't work out for him. And I thought he was a lot of fun to watch early on. Drew, do you have a player in mind that you really enjoyed seeing before the merge and someone that you wouldn't be too angry at getting a second shot in the game?
The only person I can think of is JD. I just really liked him. I liked his vibe. I liked his energy. I just thought that he was so excited. Like he was the type of player that was just so excited to be on and didn't want to lose out too early on the experience that he was just willing to just give up anything to just stay in this game. Like it just felt like strategy and everything. I'm sure he because he is such a super fan that he had this idea of how the game was going to go in his head. But by the time he like got on the beach, got to his tribe, that was thrown out the window because he just loved the experience so much that any and all strategy just went out the window to where he was handing over advantages just to stay in this game, to prove trustworthiness and everything. That I feel like if he were to come back, maybe he would be a little bit more like, okay, I can calm down. I know what's going on to a certain extent. And I kind of can feel my way around the tribe instead of kind of like freaking out during the missions or the challenges. And then just willingly handing over extra votes or anything like that. So I would like to see JD back.
We've got here in the chat, Adrienne saying, I would like to give JD or Sarah a chance to play again. I don't remember Sarah that well, to be honest with you, Chantelle. Like she was out really early, didn't really get much of an opportunity to play. Yeah, I don't remember. Is there a case for Sarah? Like, did I miss something? Because similar to Drew, I did watch most of the episodes once. I don't remember if she did anything big in the beginning that would sort of warrant a return.
I mean, I think the fact that she wanted to stay, because wasn't it, what happened was Brad wanted Sarah to go. I can't remember how it all went down, but she wanted to be there. She wanted to play. She thought she was in with Shan. She was a physical threat. And so it would be nice to see somebody that's a fan go further into the game, but it just didn't align with the strategy of that particular tribe. I think she could have done well in other tribes, even in this format of 666. I think it was just like unlucky for her. So I think giving her another opportunity is more so because it was just so unlucky for her to be in that position for I think it was 2 tribes went to tribal. Like, she wasn't able to get the numbers because she was on the puzzle, I think it was. And so anybody that's on the puzzle, chances are they're going to have fingers pointing at them. Because I think it was her and Shan on the puzzle. And they were like, well, I don't think the people on the puzzle need to, be voted out because of the fact that they lost the round for them. And they just deflected onto Sarah instead of Shan. So I think
to be honest, I wouldn't mind seeing that whole tribe come back, because the only other person that
Jeannie,
I could think of was Jeannie. Like I really enjoyed Jeannie. She wasn't meant for the game and too trusting, but I really liked her as a character. I felt like we got to know her quite well before she left, and it was interesting hearing her talk about a different generation that she came from, and like how her parents didn't accept her in the beginning or was very traditional, and how she moved past that. And I liked her. I thought she was a great player. She would have been extremely loyal. She would have been the right choice, most likely, for someone like a Shan to keep instead of a Ricard, who ultimately would go and outsmart her in the game at a later stage, because I don't think Jeannie would have turned against her. I think Jeannie would have stayed loyal. But how good would Jeannie have been with getting other people on board and buying into the alliance, I think, is what Shan would have thought about. And Ricard had that capability. So it was more about taking a weapon that could ultimately take her out in the game with her to the merge, and then cutting Jeannie instead at that point, which ultimately was a big mistake by her. But it's hard to know these things in advance if you don't have an hourglass that you can smash to go back in time. But we will get to the hourglass pretty soon. I just wanted to give my own take on the person that I most would want to see come back, and it is definitely JD, the money shot. I would love to see JD come back. He was a massive character on the screen. There's certain people, when they speak to the camera, you just feel it. You're like, I'm there with you. I've got the excitement. Yeah. I can see all the excitement oozing through you. And he was one of those players. Like, we were robbed of JD in this season, going out as early as he did. I would have loved to have seen what he could have come up with, what games I think being 20, he was just too young for the show at this time. And different people mature at different times, but he was taught a life lesson here in this season. So I do think that he's one of those players from the pre-merge, more so even than Brad. I can see Brad coming back and playing the exact same game. JD would definitely change it up, and he would definitely have a different game plan if he was playing this game again. He's a gamer, so I've got to respect another gamer, someone who's probably a fellow geek like myself, loving all the Marvel stuff and Survivor. He's one of us. We got to support the fans. So JD for me would have definitely been the person that I would love to see come back and play this game. Now, Chantelle, we're going to get into your favorite twist. right here at the merge. So we've got two different tribes. They split into two different tribes. We've seen similar kind of twists on Australian Survivor where large amounts of people are safe and large amounts of people are in danger. And this is a similar twist here, but it's 50-50 where half of the tribe is going to win immunity. They're not going to be in danger. The other half is going to have to go and potentially fend for themselves. And one of them will go home because they're the only eligible people that can be voted out. But the twist is, Erica doesn't get into a tribe and she gets sent to a separate island, and we get to know her for the first time, really. I mean, we had very limited screen time with her pre-merge, but we get to know her a little bit.
The fact that they were trying to throw challenges to vote her out of the game. So
except for
that,
that,
why they were feeling that way about her, which I would have
Yeah.
liked to just understand a little bit more about, like, okay, so, you know, they did, so Nasir and Erica picked rocks. You know how I feel about picking rocks. Like, why wasn't it a schoolyard pick at least, so that, like, at least then we can understand if there's some resentments that's being held with why she might, you know, do certain things. But she picked these rocks, and now she's going to be, you know, she wasn't on the winning tribe has to choose between her and Nasir as to whether who's going to join them on the merge feast and get their merge buffs. And she went off into her island. Sorry, continue. I just had to interject.
No, 100%. I love the extra flavor you gave there. And I mean, we didn't even touch on Nasir absolutely, you know, beasting it in the challenge and winning it, even though Danny and Deshaun are both trying to throw it. You know, Nasir just says, no, I'm going to take the win here. But, you know, she goes off on this island. She gets the opportunity of opportunities. Jeff comes out there, the executive producer of the show, somebody that she probably would have idolized and looked up to for many seasons playing the game, saying to her, here's the twist. You can smash this glass and be safe. If you don't smash it, you're not safe, 1. And then 2, if you smash it, you may become a legend in the game and change the course of the direction of the game. There was no choice here, Chantelle, right? There was no choice for her in this specific spot.
Absolutely. And for them to leave it on a cliffhanger, like, that's actually was rude and insulting as, like, a super fan and an audience member, because there was no stakes for her. Like, obviously she is going to smash it if that means that she's going to get safety, especially with her being away from the merged tribe for 2 days, like, by herself. So she's not even able to, like, ingratiate herself and, like, get to know new people. Of course, anybody that's not at camp is most likely going to be the person that everybody agrees with being the person that they're going to want to vote out. So of course she's going to take this game-changing advantage where she's going to smash the hourglass, change the course of time, and basically lie to all the people that just dug deep, which he definitely made a point of saying, like, my favorite line is dig deep, digging deep, whatever. So they dig deep, they win, and then she gets to smash this hourglass and save herself. So I don't behoove her for doing so. Of course I would have done it. But then, like, the other tribe that won immunity now is going to be eligible for elimination. Like, it's rude. It's rude. Especially because she didn't have any choice to really make.
Drew, thoughts on this? Dolores says that Erica was going to smash it right away, as she said in her interviews, but they stopped her. And all of us were thinking it, like, if you're out there, you probably don't even give Jeff the opportunity to walk away. And it was such a anti-climax. Like, Survivor's got a great format of what it's been doing for years and years. I think this might have been the first ever non-elimination episode that we've seen of Survivor. If we don't count if we don't take into account the season reviews that we had, or the recaps of the season that used to happen in the very old school Survivors, maybe like prior to season 10, this is probably the only non-elimination episode we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I made the joke when the episode went that when Jeff turns to, like, get the mallet, and he leaves the hourglass on the rock and then he turns to get the mallet, she already smashes it with a rock and been like, all right, let's do this thing. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It's like a lawyer leading the witness almost, in that way he was phrasing everything. It's like, you don't have to do anything. The game stays the same. But if you do, legendary status, you're safe. What more do I need to say? It's like, you can shut up now, Jeff, because you didn't even need to give me the option. Just come to the island and say, oh yeah, you're safe. Because why would nobody smash it? Like, I don't understand that at all. Like, it was really pointless and dumb.
If she got immunity no matter what, then we would see her weighing out, like, okay, like, should I do this or shouldn't I do this? Like, who's on the other tribe?
Yeah.
Who's going to be mad at me? Like, you'd really see her weighing out these pros and cons, and we would see, you know, this decision be made, and she may have chosen not to, or, you know, she might have chosen to, and it would have been definitely a more interesting version of this twist, her making the decision, her having immunity no matter what. So I think that they dropped the ball because they wanted to ensure that it was done. I think that they took actually all the drama out of that entire twist.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, if you're someone, guys, on the other side of this, right, and you've just fought to get an immunity, you've just won it fair and square, you hear that, no, you have now lost your immunity. You're going to go to tribal council. You're in danger. You know, Danny spoke about this in some of his exit interviews, that this is the point where he lost his competitive drive to win the show, because he felt like any of the future immunity challenges coming up, what was the point in exerting too much energy trying to win it when it can be taken away from you? And we find out that Danny is a massive fan of the show. He's not like one of these athletes that they've brought in, recruited to do the show. He's watched it for years and years and years, and he just felt empty inside after this. It kind of broke his soul. And I think it's hard for people like ourselves that are not out there on the island. We're not starving. We're not depraved of food, going through the I guess, environment where we can't trust anyone. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It must have a different effect on you. Like, if you could go and have a good sleep, hot bath afterwards, get a full belly, maybe you come back for the next challenge afterwards thinking differently about it. But it got him out of game mode because he was a beast in the pre-merge, but he kind of disappeared a little bit and didn't win as many immunities until the one that was very significant to him, on the anniversary of his dad's passing, which was very sad to hear, you know, that the struggles that he's been going through himself, and obviously being on the island, he's had a lot of time to internalize and think about it. But overall, you know, if you were a fan of the show, you're out there, you're playing this game, and this happens to you, how would you guys sort of internalize it and cope with it? Because I think I would have reacted the exact same way Danny did.
So I'd heard that Danny reacted very poorly, and they didn't show his reaction to its entirety. So somebody wrote, Danny basically reamed Jeff out. He was like, this isn't a twist. This is a lie. You told us that if we won the challenge, we would get immunity. And then there was a long conversation about it. So I would have loved to see this long conversation about it, because that's the Survivor reality TV that I want to see. You know, like, people are going to have reactions to, you know, lying to them in the game. And I would probably have had the same reaction. I don't think that I'd be as quick as Deshaun was to be like, oh, well, this is the game. Like, let's just move forward. It happened. Like, I don't think I would be able to do that, because how I like to play games is knowing all the rules and trying to figure out how to play well to win the game. And you need to know the rules in order for you to be able to play optimally. And if you don't have all the rules, then you can't play well. And if you change the rules in the middle of the game, then what's the point of playing at all? If, like, this is free for all, like, well, then have it be a free for all, but nobody's going to enjoy playing the game if it's only about chance.
Like Jeff's every season he goes and gets closer and closer to the sun. You know, like he tests the limits of the players, he tests the limit of the players, you know, and the fans at the same time. And I think this specific moment, Jeff wants to be a part of the show so badly. Like Drew said, you know, he's constantly involved. But when there's something great to have him involved in the show, something of substance, you know, like we would have loved to have seen this argument between Jeff, because Jeff becomes a player himself in the game by doing these creative twists. He takes a step backwards, and maybe this is going to sound harsh when I talk about it, but he's a bit of a coward in this situation. If you own and fully agree that this was a good decision in the game, then show us the footage, show us the receipts. How did you justify it to the players at that point when they were not happy about this? Because, you know, for me, this is probably the point, Drew, where, you know, this alone isn't why Erica won, but this is a massive, massive reason that she did win the season ultimately, because she probably could have gone home at this point, right?
100%. And I want to say my reaction would have been the half-baked when that guy quits the fast food restaurant. You just go, F you, F you, F you, you're cool, F you, I'm out. And then you just walk away, because the whole game is basically chance. I mean, Deshaun, I keep on going back to it, but I can't believe that Deshaun had to choose between 3 boxes. And if he chose wrong, that's his whole game. Like, really? Like, that's where the tipping
For $1
point is like,
million. Like, I
yeah,
know it's a game show, but like, come on.
so dumb. It's so bad. I was like, that's where I lost it, because I was like, for Danny, if I was in the game and immunity, your shot in the game could be taken away like that, and you actually performed and got that win, that's frustrating. And yeah, I think I would decline in motivation too. Like, I would probably come back and be like, I really do want to win this, despite if I get taken out by luck or chance or whatever. But to think that your shot is like, you could be in a good social standing, and because you tried and lost out on an immunity challenge first, to then have to choose a box to say if you're going to stay, it's like, whatever. Like, to me, it's like, whatever. Like, I can't do that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Adrian here says that, okay, but let's be real. If Danny would have had the option to smash the hourglass,
Yeah,
would
he
he
said
have
he
done
would.
it? And he probably would have. Like, I mean, it'd be dumb for any player not to do it. And the problem isn't Erica here. None of us are going
No,
at
no.
Erica in this situation. This is all the producers. Like, why do you, similar to how they put a lot of pressure on the players to make a decision about the whole phrase of common and guys, you know, again, you're putting pressure on a player to make a decision here that's in her best interest. I mean, let's be honest, $1 million does not come around every year, you know? So when you get that option to take that shot at breaking an hourglass, you do it. You definitely take that shot. And I think that it would have been interesting to see what Danny would have done, and if he would have had some moral conflict that he would have talked about, like, listen, I come from the NFL, where when we play, it's all about fair and hard wins, and hard work gets you there. There's no moving the goalposts mid-game or changing the rules as to what we're going to be doing here. But you know, ultimately, this is what happens, and this is what we get. I guess it makes for great podcasting content. You know, like, there's a lot for us to talk about and dive into here. So he's doing us a favor with this, but definitely it's not fun to watch when you see these goalposts being moved like this. And Drew, you talked about another twist there, which is the do or die twist. And one of the things, Chantelle, that you would be very aware of, having watched some of the Australian Survivor show, it does come into similar kind of twists at certain times where you can choose different things, and one of those different things could potentially keep you in the game. So it's not new to me as an international viewer of the show seeing this. The one big difference, and the one thing I will give credit to, I didn't like the twist, but the one thing I will give them credit to is that they actually showed us what was below each one of those options, and if there was a realistic chance for Deshaun to go home. So, you know, we saw that he had the flame, and there was 2 kill shots that he could have selected. In the international version, we don't always see what the other options were. So there's always a lot of speculation that they want to keep this person safe, that the producers bring this shot in to potentially keep someone safe in the game that they wanted to keep. But luckily with the US Survivor, they do show us at least that he had a very realistic shot at going home at that point in the game. But ultimately that twist costs Liana her game. And, you know, again, I have to feel like, you know, Liana, at some points, I had a love-hate relationship with her. I liked her sometimes. Sometimes I felt she got a bit too petty for me. But overall, I don't want to see a player go out this way in the game. And it just seems like such an unfair gamble. Let's go put it all on black in the casino type of game at the moment. And it takes away from strategy in a game that we love to see strategy.
And the only thing about this that I didn't mind compared to, we'll say, the hourglass twist, is the fact that they knew the risk, sort of, coming into it. So they knew that if the person that dropped first was going to automatically not be eligible for immunity, they were going to be somebody that's going to have to be put through this like chance testing. So Deshaun was in the hot seat here, and like he specifically could take this risk because chances are he was going to be voted out that tribal council. So I like the fact that he got to choose whether or not he was going to participate. But all in all, I don't think that I enjoy seeing people play games of chance. Like, I never played like the game of life at home or go fish, or, you know, like I never played games even growing up that were purely chance. I was like, it's boring. There's no point. There's no way that I can do well and play the best game possible if it's just for chance. And so I just don't think that Jeff understands why people enjoy playing games, and that is because they have the power within themselves to do well. You know, if they train, they can be, you know, physically competitive and get in there. We talk about the challenge all the time and how, like, well, get better at puzzles, get better at math problems, whatever. Like, you could do well to make yourself, put your body in the best position to play well in the game. And when it just becomes part of all about chance, it's a different game, and maybe other people would want to play it. It'd just be more a game show, fine. But it's not Survivor how I like to enjoy it. And so I would be mortified if I was Liana that didn't play in that particular, like, do or die. And she made the right decision. I thought that everybody should not have played except for Deshawn, and just allow Deshawn to get, like, you know, to win immunity. I think it was probably would have been the best way just to kill that challenge and just, like, have that round be nullified. But she shouldn't, like, they shouldn't have played and risked their game like that. And so she did that. He ends up lucking out, and then she goes home, and she didn't really have a shot to really save herself. It just kind of sucks. Like, I don't find that compelling, personally. Seeing people lose the game, no strategy really involved.
What was compelling, one thing that was compelling there, just before I let you go, Drew, was the conversation that Liana had, right? Which was a real life conversation about, you know, the fact that wherever she goes, she's a black woman. She's got to live with that. There's certain things that comes with that, which obviously, Chantelle, you'll probably appreciate it more than most, and definitely myself and Drew being on the panel hearing it through. But obviously we love to be educated and listen to those types of conversations happening. But even though this real life conversation is happening there, you can see these people that are struggling with it morally. Like, you know, Xander was really like, and we all also know, for those who've watched the behind the scenes, that Xander had a bit of a crush on Liana. That she wasn't aware of. But, you know, he struggles with it quite a bit, but ultimately they still do the right thing by voting her out for their game, because there was the struggle between real life and also what they needed to do to progress their own games within the Survivor world that they've created for themselves out there in 41. So that was compelling in itself. The twist wasn't compelling. It was the real life stuff that was happening behind the scenes as well, for me, in that specific episode. Sorry, Drew, I interrupted you there.
No, I just wanted to say that, to Chantelle's point, for saying, like, they shouldn't have played the game. I watch Survivor to watch people compete, and for them to continuously be like, well, you can compete and you can put your game on the line, or just don't do anything, and we can just, like, all pack up and go home. It's like, oh yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see no immunity challenge, and I want to see people just walking around hoping that they don't leave due to chance. I mean, to me, and then on top of that, for them to be like negotiating for Jeff to give him some rice. I don't want to compete in the challenge because I want some rice. I need food. I would rather not compete to play in a game I've been dying to compete for years and sending in my audition tape. I just want food. I want to eat. I want to help out my other fellow tribe mates. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is a great part of the game, seeing people sit on the bench hoping to get a cup full of rice and not even be able to play the game because they're too famished. To me, it was just like garbage each week to be like, oh, this handful of people aren't going to play because they want to get a couple rice. They're not going to play because of a twist that, oh, they don't want to have to play Deal or No Deal with Jeff at Tribal Council. It's like that's what I want. I don't want to see people compete. That's what I want my game to be.
Right.
That's where the frustration came from me.
Chantelle, before we completely move on from that subject, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about it as well. The tribal conversation was such an eye-opener for future players and audiences that have been watching. And a big part of that conversation there was Liana being very aware of what the fandom probably would be thinking at home, and thinking that, you know, we don't want this in our game. We don't want to see real conversations like this being had because, you know, it's over politicizing the game of Survivor. But she said you can't have that in the game. You can't have a diverse cast, and you kind of touched on it earlier as well, without having some of these conversations. What was it like for you as someone watching this game that could probably relate more to Liana than most, watching this? What did it mean to you to watch this play out in the flagship show probably of reality TV over in the US of all shows?
Well, I mean, I already kind of got used to having this conversation for the fact that Big Brother was a main focus. The cookout, they realize that they're going to put aside their games that they've been auditioning for, that they've been wanting to be on for, you know, many seasons, many years, and they're putting it aside for the culture. And I totally understand, like, and I cried for about all those episodes when they had those, when you seeing what Deshaun was going through, seeing what Liana's experience, and how, you know, all they really want to do is go and play this game that they love as well, but they have something that's following them that they can never hide from, and they can never, you know, just pretend it doesn't exist, because their color of their skin never disappears, and how they are, you know, seen in the world never goes away. And we are really judgmental about, you know, how people play their games. And so if they're feeling as though that they have to represent the culture, it's because they know how ruthless, especially in those like Reddit rooms, people would be for them to be like, I can't believe that they turned on like someone from their own background, like how dare, like, and I've seen it happen, that people are expecting, we'll just say Black players, to work together because they never get that opportunity. And it might not be the best choice for their individual games to work together at all points. And so I totally understand wrestling between like getting reamed out by people after you come off of the show for making a game decision for yourself instead of working with somebody that looks like you for the culture. So I totally understood their, like, what they were going through. I've experienced it playing like online games before, where it's like, you know, I was like completely shocked that somebody used the fact that we were similar to gain kind of a bond with me, and then completely went against it. And I thought that was really distasteful. And I'm like, don't say anything at all if you're not going to honor that. And so that's what I think what Shan and just thought Deshaun was doing, was like just saying like, oh, we're doing it for the culture, and then actually wasn't really intending on honoring that. I feel bad for the fact that they can't just play Survivor, right? Like if there's a lot of people that look like them, they are expected, regardless of whether it's valid or not, there's going to be at least a few million people that are expecting them to play together and are watching the show because they're on it and they want to see them play together. And having that on your shoulders, it's there no matter what, whether they want to play the game for themselves or not. And so I felt for them, and I definitely cried about watching it, because I know how hard it must have been.
And it's tough because, you know, some people personality wise, they just don't mesh, you know, they don't see the game in the same way, which is what happened with Deshaun and Chantelle this season. Chantelle played a very strong, dominant game. She wanted to do her own thing out there, and Deshaun also had a very strong opinion of his own and how he wanted to play it and which direction he wanted to go in. So I kind of, the only way I can relate to this is to, if I was ever to go and play on a show such as Survivor and I'm there with other South Africans, you know, just because I'm a South African and they're a South African doesn't, like, I'd want to work with them, but it doesn't mean we'll get along. What if I get along with Drew better, who's from the USA? You know, it's tough. We're all very different. It's what makes the show compelling. But it also makes it even more impressive to see, I guess, what the Cookout was able to do on Big Brother, where a lot of people thought, oh, you know, they just stuck together early on, made the game very easy and predictable for them to get there. But the very next season of Survivor, they tried to do something similar. It didn't make it to the end. It showed that it's more difficult to keep a group like that together just based on the commonality of their skin color and potentially where they come from as a background. You also have to personality-wise get along with people and like them and want to be around them and play with them. Ultimately, Drew, do you think this is the moment that sunk Deshaun's game? Because for me, for a big part of the game, Deshaun was one of those people that I thought was hovering in my top 4 potential picks to win the game, and he had a pretty good game, and it kind of went sideways, and he tried to overcorrect and compensate, I felt like, after this move of getting rid of Chantelle in the game. Is this ultimately what cost him in the end?
I first want to say that on a reality show that we have been talking about has been overly produced this season and overly complex, it was nice to see a genuine moment and a conversation happening. I would think we talk about it over and over again in the challenge, where it seems like there's so many inauthentic confessionals or moments that it was nice to see a genuine moment and a genuine conversation where they even stepped outside of the Survivor game at certain points and was just talking about it. And it was really awesome to see. I don't know. I think Deshaun was, once we hit the merge, I think Deshaun was really trying his hardest to go forward, but he just wasn't able to get his footing. There were so many other personalities. There were bigger personalities. There were players that had stronger connections, it felt like. And when those players made themselves known, it felt like Deshaun was just like going around just trying to figure out a way to get himself further or him to be in a better position, that maybe he was in a better position, but he wasn't feeling like he was being heard or his opinion was mattering. And so I think even if he was in a better position, he himself didn't feel that way. So I think he was constantly looking for newer players or a group to be a part of, to where he could feel like he was getting his footing and that he could feel better in. But I just felt like he was kept on backpedaling on certain things, like his own game, his own alliances, and he was just trying to figure out some way to like grasp something. And maybe it was when Danny was like kind of checking out during the game and he couldn't rely on Danny as much. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, to me, I was only watching these episodes once this whole season, so it's kind of hard to like pinpoint one certain player's trajectory over the course of the season, because there was so much going on. And I think, again, overshadowed by the twist and everything in the format, that I just got hung up on so many different things that once we got certain players like being voted off, I was like, oh, well, that sucks. I was really rooting for him, but now I got to figure out a whole different person to like root for, I guess. Now they're on the jury.
And it's actually what happened though with Deshaun's game, and they didn't show this, but what I've heard in some of these exit interviews was that, so when Deshaun, Danny were talking to Liana about the fact that they wanted to blindside Ricard, Danny actually went and told Shan in the beginning that, like, before Liana talked to her, that that's what they planned on doing, and then Shan agreed to this plan. And then if the timeline is correct in my mind, then she had a conversation with Deshaun. Then she had the conversation with Liana. So all of this, how it all kind of came about, it seemed as though Liana telling her that they're coming for you, that everything that Danny and Deshaun said were lies now, when they actually weren't lies. And so I think that whole misunderstanding that happened, that Deshaun didn't get to hear, like, realize that that's where the mix-up was, and that he wasn't able to own that because he didn't realize what Liana had told her, and that it made it look like he was lying to her in that situation, when that wasn't the case at all. So I think that he didn't have enough information. People were out of the game that were questioning him about something that he didn't know that he was involved in. So I think that that's why he wasn't able to effectively answer Shan when she asked the question, wasn't able to really explain himself, because he didn't really have all the pieces as to why people were so upset with him. So I think that that's why his game was lost. I think it's basically Liana kind of fudged that whole thing up, because if she had proposed that information in a different way and it was just a little bit more factual, I think that they would have maybe been able to stay together, instead of allowing Ricard to flip it on Deshaun, like, and make that whole thing break apart. So I'm sorry, I'm blaming Liana for the dissolving of the camp out, we're calling them.
Yeah, and listen, it's interesting because they had an opportunity there at the end of the game to vote based on the culture. They didn't do it. Like, they voted for who they thought were the best player, which is admirable. They respected the game enough to vote who they thought played the best game out there. Deshaun ultimately didn't win it this season, but when we look at the players that played post-merge, and I know there's a few big moves we're still going to talk about. There's big players we haven't spoken about, and we're going to try and get into as many of them as we can. Deshaun, for me, is probably the player that I want to see this whole season come back the most, and it might be a bit of a hot take, but I really feel like Deshaun would have looked at this season. He would have seen how he was perceived, how he reacted to not always being in control. And at some points, it was kind of like that child that throws all his toys out there because he doesn't get what he wants, and he came about and across as a little bit spoiled at times. And I think that I personally really like Deshaun. I think he's a great person. I think he's someone that I would love to see come back and amend what he did this season, play a different game. And I think he could do well again because he does have some really good social skills. He didn't struggle to make those bonds early in the game. Who's that player for you guys? And it could be Deshaun as well, that from the merge, you think if they got another shot, they probably would be in the best spot to do well again and amend their game. They would learn from this season being out there. Chantelle, we'll start with you. Who do you think is the player that you'd
I mean,
like to see go out
I
there?
love strategy and gameplay, and I don't necessarily like. Yes, I'm an emotional person, but I don't. I try my best not to mix emotion with gameplay. So I'd have to go Ricard. I do feel as though it is capable. He is capable of doing well again in a season. I think he will have learned, kind of like you're saying about Deshaun, what to do and what not to do in order to get himself a little bit further. I think the fact that it was so obvious to everybody that he was such like the challenge beast and strategic mastermind that like everybody knew that he had to go. And so maybe he would figure out how to just kind of lower his threat level a little bit in order for him to allow him to get to the end and win. So I would love to see him play again because a strategic player is always going to be strategic. They're always going to be doing something that I find interesting and captivating to watch to get to the end. So yeah, I would say Ricard, hands down. I think that he would be able to do equally as well or even win a season coming back a second time. So I want to see it.
I have two. Real quick, I would say Evie. I really liked her, and I think she's super smart. But I think that her gameplay kind of got lost somewhere where I think when she hit the merge, it kind of like her social game was and her social ties were kind of like lost it a little bit, and she didn't know how to regain herself. And she stuck by Xander, who wasn't the best connected in the tribe. So, I mean, she was able to make it far, but I think that she would have been able to make it farther in another season. And then, of course, Chantelle. I really liked her. I think she was such like, again, like JD kind of gave her all the power when he was giving her the extra votes and stuff. I think she just wanted the power and wanted so much control in a game that you can't really control a whole lot of. And I think if she comes back, maybe she would like look back and be like, okay, I can relinquish something, pick my battles, not really like when she came at Ricard and they had that big blowout on UA before like everything was supposed to merge, I was like, that is the wrong move. Like, don't burn your closest bridge right before you head into meeting new players and stuff, because once you burn the strongest bridge you have nothing. And I felt like that really kind of like started the ball rolling. And then when she was like kind of bulldozing people's ideas or kind of pushing too hard on certain aspects of it, it was like, all right, like just maybe if she comes back, she would be able to like relinquish some control in some way. And then that would probably help her get much further into the game. And she could maybe be able to pull the strings a little bit lighter and be more effective instead of being so bullish out there in some conversations.
I just want to
I
add
think
one
that-
thing about Shan. So I saw in some exit press that she was actually with a medic the day that she was voted out. And so she wasn't able to be active on the tribe like dynamics. And so when Ricard was orchestrating that, she wasn't on a camp. And so she was really sick. And when she went to tribal, she didn't have an opportunity to really feel out the dynamics. And so if she had been at camp and seen kind of what was going on and like, realized that there were people whispering and talking, she might have felt a little bit less certainty. And she said she would have played her idol, but she just didn't have an opportunity to really see what was happening at camp. She just kind of went from medic to tribal council and just thought that things were the same.
That's so I think all great mentions. And by the way, like I think another thing for me, when we're talking about players that we'd like to see back, like Sean, Ricard, Evie, I was very impressed by Evie. In fact, pre-merge, I thought I was on that red herring with thinking that Evie was actually going to go all the way. I thought she was going to find a way. She's going to be like that little sea turtle trying to get to the water. They had that scene for her, and I thought that's going to be Evie. She's going to find a way somehow. She's going to get there. She can win it. I think she's got the ability to go back and do extremely well. And I think that her social game is disarming. And people won't see her as a threat when she comes back. But from the season, Chantelle and Ricard, if they don't come back with a season of heavy hitters, they're going to be in trouble early on because people are going to know they were the two powerhouses this season when it came to strategy and driving a lot of the direction of the game. And it's funny that they were in the same tribe. They were close throughout the game, and it led to the biggest move, I think, in the game when Ricard ultimately took Chantelle out the day that she wasn't there to try and defend herself, and Ricard got one over her. I would love to see both of them come back, play a season again. Will they work together? Will Chantelle try and get one over Ricard? That would be riveting TV to see where it plays out. And then an honorable mention for me, someone that I really enjoyed seeing this season as well was Nasir. Like, I think Nasir is such a interesting, unique character that there's not going to be another Nasir. Like, there's never been another Big Tom, or those certain, like a coach, the certain archetypes you just don't see again, right? And Nasir, I could relate to him a lot as an immigrant, someone who watched Survivor growing up as a kid, where my first language is Afrikaans. His first language would be what he speaks in Sri Lanka, and learning a lot of English through watching Survivor, I thought was such an endearing storyline. And he was out there having a lot of fun, playing a big game, trusted a little bit too much and got taken out. But I think Nasir is also someone, if he was ever to come back, that could be underestimated again and, could find a way to get to the merge again. And who knows what will happen, because he's not afraid to make moves. So overall, great cast, because we haven't even spoken about some of the other people. Like, I mean, I know Xander is a fan favorite for a lot of people that watch the show. And I do like Xander as well, but I think the love for Xander is so much right now that it could also be turning a lot of fans away from him, because ultimately it was a fellow Canadian, Chantelle, that won the show, not Xander, even though people have tried to create a GoFundMe for Xander to get him that $1 million. Chantelle, what does it feel like to finally have a Canadian win the US Survivor? I think you've only had Canadians on the show maybe for like three seasons now or something like that. So pretty new to the show. So 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 seasons. Not a bad start for Canadians on Survivor.
Yeah, I wanted it to be me. But I definitely am happy with somebody that's representing Ontario. She was doing viewing parties down the street from my house, and so that was fun. Like, I actually never ended up going because I was like, oh, whatever. I don't think she's gonna go that far, or whatever, which is funny. I'm like, I guess I wish that I did go and go and see what her viewing parties were like. But I definitely think it's awesome that they opened this up to Canadians. I've wanted to play Survivor, I've wanted to play Big Brother, and I've wanted to play the challenge for over 20 years, and just not having that opportunity to be able to do that just because of a border has always been pretty annoying. So the fact that they've opened this up, and they've opened up this as a possibility for Canadians to win, because I would think that every Canadian would be voted out first. Like, we don't want Canadians to win our money. I definitely would expect that. And so I was really happy to see both Shan and Erica to get so far into the game, especially being the only 2 Canadians representing the season. So definitely happy. Sad it wasn't me, but it's nice to know that there's an opportunity for us to win Survivor in the States.
Yeah, Drew, so what was it like seeing the invasion of the Canadians here this season and doing pretty well on Survivor? And what was your overall thoughts on Erica's game? Because she ultimately took the title here. There was a lot of controversy, I guess, online. Some people were really for it. Some people said, how could she have won? I don't think people, and I could be wrong here, and you guys correct me, I don't think people are coming at Erica. I think a lot of people are coming at production for not showing us more of Erica. So I feel like we do have a bit more of an informed fan base now compared to when somebody like Natalie White won back in the day. I think people came at Natalie to the point where Natalie's no longer on social media. She doesn't engage with Survivor fans about Survivor at all. We've kind of driven her away. I do feel like, from what I've seen, and I could be wrong, I definitely don't follow social media as closely as I probably should, but I feel like most of it has been not directed at Erica, but it's more directed at the way that she was edited this season. What was your thoughts on her win?
So I didn't know she was Canadian until she won. And then Jeff was like, crazy that Canadian won. I was like, oh, she's Canadian? Cool. I didn't even, I couldn't care less that she's Canadian. I don't care where she's from. She won. She played a great game. I do think that because of how quick the game is and how twist heavy and the bigger personalities and everything, and not getting really to watch any of the Blue Tribe for the first part of the game, I think really hindered us getting to know any of the Blue Tribe until merge. I think we talked about it, the pre-merge, we were talking about all the UA tribe mates, and we were like, we got to know them and we wanted to see them back. And it's because they were doing so poorly, but because they were winning, the blue team was put at a disadvantage for all the rest of us to get to know them. And it's really sad. But yeah, I think she played a very under the radar game. And I think that's what when you have Xander, Deshaun, Ricard, and just so many bigger personalities commanding the screen, and I think editors want to put them on the screen. It's difficult when you have somebody who is working so much behind the scenes and not making the biggest moves, but making more strategical moves. And also, she had a great jury management. As Xander and Deshaun were both kind of like flopping there at the end, especially Xander. I mean, I only got to listen to a few because I think we were when it was put on in my house, I was coming to do the Challenge Insiders. So I was like listening in and I was just like, oh my gosh, please, dude, stop stumbling. Like you need to say something. And I think it was Liana's question about like, what'd you do? Or what was your adept in the game and or something to that effect. And he just was like silent for a good like beat and a half. I was like, well, that's it. You're not getting that vote. Like, come on, man. It was bad. She had flawless jury management. And then what really helped her was having Heather and Ricard on the jury, because I think they were championing for her. And so by the time everybody was coming in, I think they were trying to really push the narrative that Erica was the best out of these three players that were left. And I think whoever was on the fence, she was able to just like really nail them in and hit a bullseye when she was answering all the questions, because she was matter of fact, and she was just like so confident, where the other two were kind of falling flat on all their questions. So I have to give a lot to her jury management as well, but I wish I would have seen more of her game.
So apparently this is like the editing team for Survivor. And I think what the problem might be is that there's not a lot of diversity and a lot of women that are part of the team here that are able to tell different stories that are not their own. Right. So they're not familiar with a Filipino woman's story, and like to be able to show the social game and the relationship between two women. So we saw nothing of her and Heather's relationship. We saw nothing of Heather and Deshaun's relationship, because a part of that big fight that he had with Shan at that live tribal, which I also hate, was because he wanted to keep Heather in the game, because they had a really close relationship, a really close bond that we never got an opportunity to see. And so I think that they just didn't do a good job. I didn't think they did Erica's game any justice by not telling her story at all. I didn't feel satisfied at the end. I was like, okay, any of them could win. Like, that's fine. Like, they all played a decent enough game. But I wasn't rooting for somebody. I wasn't like, oh my God, like their game was amazing. Did you see that move that they made? Like, they have to honor that. Like, she had to like show them like what happened in her game and show us what happened in their game. I would really have appreciated if I could see this coming along a little bit more, instead of just being like, surprise, Erica played a really fantastic game, but we didn't show you because we wanted to keep it a secret, because like we wanted the suspense of it all. No, show me the little nuggets, little bits and pieces of like how this game evolved, and so I could feel satisfied with the win. I wasn't satisfied as a Survivor player or wannabe player or a fan, super fan. I wasn't invested in her win at all, because I don't know anything about her. They didn't allow me to care about her in any sort of way. We didn't even really see one of those packages about like where she came from. I know she talked a little bit about her family and about like wanting to do this for her family and her family. She's a first generation person from, I think, the Philippines. So that was interesting. But like, I want to know more about your gameplay, about the decisions that you're making. I want to see it. And I saw none of it. And so it just was like, oh, okay, she won. Okay, why? I'm not sure. She's gonna have to.
And I don't buy it. I don't buy it that there was nothing to show, because her and Heather had a very close relationship. We find out at the end, at the final tribal council, that she didn't have the best one-on-one relationships with every single person on the jury, which makes a win interesting, because normally it's a social reason that, for great social games is why people would win a show such as Survivor. But she didn't necessarily have those bonds with everyone. And some people asked, why did she never approach me? Like, I think it was Sean. Why didn't we really talk that much? Or, why didn't we have that one-on-one relationship? And she explained, like, her way is to work better one-on-one, which some people are just better one-on-one. And Heather was her meat shield. She was the person who was going out there doing a lot of the conversations. She was moving through Heather at times within the game, and Heather seemed to be the person who had a lot of that social skill. So I would have loved to have seen that story with her and Heather talking like, listen, Heather, this is what we need to do today. You go talk to Deshaun about this. I'll go talk to Xander about this, because this is where, like, those conversations would have happened. Like, you cannot tell me they were just sitting there nodding to each other and they instinctively knew what the other one was doing. No, there would have had to have been some conversations there. And I agree with you, Chantelle. To me, when we went into that finale, I didn't have a horse in a race too much. But I could have seen if Xander won, I would have been like, I understand, because I saw a lot of Xander's game throughout the season. If Deshaun won, I would have been, I understand, even though he fell flat, he overplayed and did things wrong at a point in the game. At least I've been on a journey with Deshaun throughout this whole season. I can't say the same for Erica, which is a shame, because I do think she played a great game, probably an underrated game at this point, where if she was able to come back and Winners at War 2, play a game again, because she probably would only come back for another Winners season. I just don't think the editors are going to be jumping to have Erica back on another season easily. I think that she could do extremely well again, because people like, if you're a Survivor fan, if you're someone that looks at the Winners and think, what can I learn from this Winners game? What can I take to the next season to play? There's nothing there, really. It's her game was get some of what we've seen. I'm not saying that was her game, but her game from what we've seen in the edit was get a close friend, let that friend work some of the social connections, move with the majority alliance, but the minority alliance, get the people that are outcasts within the game and sort of work against and chip away at the bigger alliance. It's kind of what she did and how she got to the end. But it's a very complex game to dissect and look at and say, this is, Erica's not going to be writing the Erica rule book on how to win, like the Boston Rob rule book on how to win Survivor, because there wouldn't be much for us to be able to point back, or for her to be able to point back. But that's why her exit interviews are going to be so interesting, and I'm going to go and listen to a lot of that over the next couple of weeks to find out a little bit more about Erica and how she actually played the game. I don't know if you guys have had an opportunity to listen to some of those, but for me, it seems that she was severely under-edited. And when you showed the editing team, I couldn't help but laugh, because it was so obvious that there's no diversity, like you said, in the editing team. But also, I wouldn't blame each one of those people, because at the end of the day, a lot of this is being made. These decisions are made at a producer level, where they give the cliff notes to these guys to say, you edit this way. This is what we want the storyline to be. And you guys do the grunt work on how to get there. So I would like to see, who's in charge at the top level of that editing team. And, what is the creative process that goes into putting a story together? Because I feel like if the winner isn't something that is satisfying to someone at the end of the season, it takes away from the rewatchability of the season. Like, if I look at the season, Drew, like, it's not a season that I'm going to watch 2 or 3 times. I don't know about you. I don't think the rewatchability is there.
I would not rewatch this season. I would much rather go through the other seasons that I was rewatching during Winners at War. But this is the frustrations that I think I've had with the challenge, is the editing process. And it's like, the winner. By the time you are filming this, the winner. Why aren't you giving us anything to help us like feed through some of these? And don't make it obvious, of course, like how they are like, oh, they're talking so much, they're the winner. But it's like double agents where Amber won, but we got so little of Amber throughout the whole season. By the time she wins, you're going like, oh, well, she didn't do anything on the season. She got paired up with CT and CT helped her win. And it's like, that's it to an extent, but like, why couldn't we have more with Amber in the confessionals? The same with Erica. Why couldn't we get more to where, even if it wasn't super flashy, you could show some moves, you can show her some confessionals to help perpetuate to where Chris is feeling like, oh, I can see any 3 of these players winning because I got to see enough of them. And it's like, it's basic storytelling, and it's the way you help the audience follow along, instead of showing so much of Brad, who is going to be gone in episode 4, or whoever is gone in episode 1. It's like, you don't have to. It's just frustrating. It's just frustrating on all levels, because the same thing happened with Casey, where we got to see more of her this season, but she wasn't doing a whole lot, but she wasn't shown doing a whole lot, and she didn't need to because of the Vet Alliance. It's just laziness on the editors, or it's just like, oh, we want to put this forward, but seeing the pictures of the snow-capped mountain, which is known as the Survivor editing team, it doesn't surprise me about the decisions that were made.
Yeah, there wasn't going to be a lot of resistance if the producers gave them certain cliff notes. It'd be like, yeah, we'll do what you want.
I always wanted to add something as well, and like I'm not knocking Erica's game. Like if you got to the end and you won, like you did what you needed to do. So this is just kind of, you know, just dissecting it a little bit and holding it to like a high standard. But the fact with that at the end of the game, so I think it was the final 5. They decide to move them to an empty island where they have to start from scratch again. Then they give all of them this envelope with this new advantage potentially, where they had to solve a word scramble and then go find some dancing trees to find an advantage in the next immunity challenge. And the advantage I thought was so overpowering that it doesn't, like, it allowed her to 100% win. So Erica won this, obviously. I don't think that she would have won the game if she didn't win this particular challenge. And like, I was just watching, as I mentioned in the beginning, Australian Survivor, where they literally put them in a torture device, literally out there for
endurance.
5 hours. And like
who wants it the
minutes.
most?
Pardon?
It's basically it's endurance. Who wants it the most? Like,
I
who
want
will
to see an endurance final 3. Like, I want to see people with their hand on a post for 6 hours, 7 hours, 10 hours. Like, I want that. I want to see that, because I want to see who wants it the most. I don't want to see someone get an advantage climbing some stairs and solving a puzzle when we've been seeing that the entire season already. Like, I would have loved to see an endurance challenge like that, where everybody has like an equal shot of winning if they have the willpower. This one, if you don't have the advantage, you don't really have a shot at winning unless you can catch up to her. And so I felt that was really unbalanced at the position in the game. It was too late in the game to have such a huge heavyweighted advantage on, like, and it was something that, like, you couldn't be any faster. Like, Ricard was so fast, but he couldn't match up to her getting like 4 rungs and then 4 rungs on her 2 ladders. So I thought that was also unfair for everybody else playing. Fair for Erica, because like I think it got her the win, but like it also didn't feel great to me that like she won that because she had an advantage, and then she won the game because she won that challenge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you 100%, and you're speaking my language when it comes to these endurance challenges that you want to see. Like, who wants it the most physically? Who can push past the fact that they've been deprived of food for such a long time? You know, that would truly make it the toughest season ever. You know, like, they kept telling us it's the toughest season ever, but that would have made it the toughest season if they had all these restrictions and then they had to physically show up without an advantage to get to the end. It would have been something where you looked at it and said, that person really deserved it. And a lot of these endurance challenges that you'll see, because some people might say, well, that will unfairly put it into the guys' court and the guys will more win this, but it's not. A lot of these endurance and stamina challenges, even if you look at the international seasons, it's females who wins it a lot of the times, because in general, females can endure a lot more pain than men. It's just a fact. That's why females, you know, do childbirth, and we don't have to go through that because we can't endure pain. We don't have that endurance and stamina. So if you're a guy that wins it, it's even more impressive. And a few things, I think that would need to get workshopped before they go into season 43, because we know season 42 is already done and dusted, and a lot of things would have, Jeff would have just gone in his own direction and would have kept it. But one of those things, guys, before we, sort of get to the end here, because I know we've been on for a while, that I wanted to talk about just briefly was, how did you feel about the shortened season? Because obviously a lot of different things were changed, and a lot of things were thrown into the season to compensate for the fact that we had a shorter season. Jeff felt like he had to make it more difficult or do crazy, wacky things in the season. Are you guys a fan of the shortened 26-day season? I know we haven't actually spoken about it at all. I'm pretty low on it, but it'd be interesting to hear. Drew, what's your thoughts on the season the way it is currently?
I don't like it if they are not given food or anything like that. I thought the food restriction was the toughest on everybody. I don't care if it's 2 weeks shorter. It's still freaking difficult when you're not eating anything, and then you're expected to go out there and perform physical challenges, sometimes twice in an episode, because you have to do immunity and you also have to do for a feast or something to that effect, or even a small fish that somebody was given. So to me, I don't like it. especially for the way it was formatted. I don't mind it if they were given some rations to help them get through the time a little bit easier. But I mean, what they were given wasn't like posh or anything. Even for 39 days, I don't think it was posh. I think everybody was still freaking hungry on the normal day. So it was being for them to cut it down by 13 days and then be like, nope, nothing. You don't get anything. And sometimes you don't even get, even if you get second place, you get one fish. So congratulations. It's like, no, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to see people starve and being malnutritioned and to the point where they're not even at camp to save themselves and be able to play the game. It's just frustrating overall. And then to know that we're kind of going into the same thing next season is a bit frustrating as well on my part.
Well, definitely echo all your sentiments here because, like, I know I'm a creature of habit. I like the old school format, so I like the 39 days. Like, I like even hearing it. 39 days, one survivor.
One survivor.
It's something that I enjoy about the show. In the finale, they didn't even mention outwit, outplay, outlast, and I was like, "What? That's like those are." Is that not on the flag anymore? Oh my God, is that gone? Is it now outlie, out luck, out? I don't know. We were workshopping this, and I can't remember what the other one. Outlie, out luck, out advantage. I think is what the new, the whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I wish that they would just go back to something more similar to what we were used to. I understand that because of COVID protocols, they're going to have to do, the quarantining. And so like, they didn't want to take people away for as long. I totally understand that they're trying to do what they could to try to make it still be a captivating season with, filming during COVID. I totally understand that. I totally respect that. But I don't think that the changes that they made were good. So now, as far as I know, like the format of the season is in the past, they used to do day one would be, say, the reward challenge. Day two would be camp life interviews, like B-roll footage. Day three, immunity challenge and tribal council. So I thought that spread out quite nicely. And I didn't even realize that I was going to be missing reward challenges. But I was like, oh my God, it's a reward challenge. Yay. Like, so seeing them come together as tribes, seeing them work together, seeing, we got that moment with Heather where she, everybody was like, cheering her on because like she wasn't able to do it, but she didn't give up. Whatever, it was an opportunity to have some character building moments when we're seeing these reward challenges. And I would love to see them have to go away and like get food and stuff like that. Like, I feel like they just want to starve them and really just torture them in a way that didn't provide captivating television. Kind of like what you're saying, Drew. It's like, yes, you want them to be surviving. Yes, we do want to torture them to a certain extent. But like the fact that they're not going to have like brain capacity to make educated decisions, to be barking at your friends, like maybe it's a little bit captivating, but it's so damaging for their games that I don't know if it's worth it to, to see Shan and Ricard fight over a piece of papaya. Like, I don't know, was that worth it? Or could they have just been giving them a little bit of food so this wouldn't have been such a big deal? I'm totally with you, Drew. I don't enjoy this new format. I hope that 43, they can go back to the regular length season so that we could be able to learn a little bit more about these players. Even if they kept all these stupid twists, at least with that extra day, there would be more opportunity to get some more footage on these players. I don't know if they have enough footage on them to be able to tell good stories. And that's why they're just falling onto them reading how to play this game in their confessionals, because they don't have any other confessionals of like what they're actually doing in the game. So
they just had the producers there with a little card showing them every time. Toughest season ever. Keep saying toughest season ever. Drop the four, keep the one.
Like, I know we were talking about the food part, but like it didn't look that tough. And I was listening to Russell Hands before we did this, and he was talking about like, he's like, I think every other season was more tough than this particular season. Like, yes.
Samoa was bad because it was raining for like, I think the majority of the time that they were there, they couldn't stay dry at all. Oh, yeah, there you go. So, I mean, there's been seasons where they've had to evacuate people from the island and bring them back on because the weather was that bad, But I agree with everything you guys say in regards to the rice and not having that food. Like, I mean, they don't need to get superb food, but give them at least rice so that they can function and we can get better TV, because we don't want to see a bunch of zombies out there. The 26 days, I'm not a fan. I prefer 39 days. I'm an old school fan, a salty old school fan like Chantelle. I like the spacing of it for all the reasons that Chantelle has mentioned. And also it just feels like, after 39 days, the mental drain of having been on the island, being taken away from civilization, has an impact in your decision making and why you do what you do in the game as well. And now when we look at Australian Survivor, that's like twice the amount of time that the US Survivor is, with 50 days, versus the 26 days. You're like, it can be done. We do have Adam Jumba here in the chat as well. It says, to be fair, Australia did have the benefit of filming in their own country boundaries, which is true. That definitely did help them to be able to do the longer seasons, because they wanted to fit 2 seasons in Fiji, and Fiji has been similar to New Zealand, very, very strict on who they let into the country, with everything going on at the moment with the situation that we have with the pandemic. So obviously that made a really big difference in what they could and couldn't do this season. I'm just hoping Jeff doesn't look at this and say, great, I've got 2 weeks less of having to be out there filming and I can still make the same amount of money. I just want to continue to make the show shorter and shorter and get more bang for my buck. I'm hoping he does move back to a more usual schedule after this. I've got 2 more things I wanted to tap in really quickly here before we finish off with the podcast. I know we've been live for quite a while. One of it was the end reunion show. With Survivor 40, we didn't have a reunion show at all. We had something that they tried to do on Zoom, didn't quite work out. They ended up cutting everything out and just keeping the final 3 in there. And, still even up until today, I think we as fans, we were robbed of a great live reunion show when it comes to Winners at War. They completely changed it up here this season. They did the live reveal on the island. They did the review or the reunion on the island as well. How did you guys feel about seeing the reunion and the raw reactions of the players straight after the game? And Drew, will come to you to give us a little bit of an insight as to how did you think this played out? Did you like it? Should they keep it or should it go?
I think it was decent. I think it was different. It was fine. I almost would rather they have done something else. Like maybe they could have wrapped up that night and then maybe done something at Ponderosa the next day once everybody got some sleep, enough food. I just didn't like the idea of okay, you can call out to anybody, get you a piece of pizza or champagne or whatever. It's these people are starving. Just let them eat, let them enjoy their moment, let it sink in for a night, and then maybe do something when everybody gets to have their own thing. I don't know. I just think that maybe they could have done something at Ponderosa or even come back the next day and then would have done it. It just felt like we're doing it now, and then we're gonna bring the next people in here, so we're just gonna let's wrap it up. We only have this place for another 3 hours, we got to hurry it up, kind of thing. It's all right, well, let's all calm down here. But I thought it was fine, it was decent, but I'd much prefer them do it maybe not in New York, but go to do it the next day or 2 days later at Ponderosa, just to have a little bit more feel where people can actually. I think people are just such wrapped up in the moment at that time. Even I mean, even I think Ricard was saying that he felt like he was gonna win, and he was I'm coming in here to vote on somebody to win. I thought I was gonna win because it hasn't really sunk in yet. So to get everybody's raw reactions, I would like a little bit more time to let them reflect and then come back and be okay, this is the game and everything, instead of being so, I think, frantic in the moment kind of thing. You're just running off of pure adrenaline at that point.
One of the good things, though, Chantelle, is we didn't have the goofy go into the crowd, talk to a kid, all these other things. Seeing Cochrane again at the live reunion, for the 20th time, it cut out a lot of the fluff and allowed us to have more time with the players at least. So maybe Drew does have a point there in regards to doing something on the island, maybe on Ponderosa, but having it a day after or something like that. Scheduling wise, it might not have worked, but I thought there were some positives to this as well. It wasn't all negative, seeing the raw reactions of some of the players straight after the game.
I mean, I think that we could have a little bit of both. What I liked about it, I did like them that they were surprised by the fact that they were going to be revealing the winner right away. So I thought that moment played really well. They weren't expecting that. They were expecting to be okay, we'll see you in 3 months in New York or whatever. So I thought that was interesting that they kind of went back to season 1 and had this reveal right after they cast their vote. So I liked that part of it. I didn't like seeing Erica just stunned sitting there while like all like the catering people are walking back with 5 glasses in their hand holding a pizza, and she's just standing there like she's like, I won. Like maybe it was humorous, but like that was the only payoff that really got from them doing the live reunion right after. And so I love it when you see the players after they've had food, they've got to watch the season. They see like, oh my God, that's what was going on. They've been able to have conversations with people, cleared up some misunderstandings, being able to like really assess what has happened in the game. And so when Jeff does come to them and ask some questions, they can have some perspective and they can really respond in a way that makes a lot of sense. I think that Deshaun's answer to some of these questions would be completely different from how he answered when he's malnourished and like still in the hot seat. He just realized that he lost $1 million. Like he thinks that people hate him and thinks that he was using the culture as part of his strategy. And then he would have had some perspective though and be like, well, this is what was really going on. And he would be able to really talk about what he was going through a little bit more with a lot more, as I said, perspective. So I like being able to see them dressed up and fed with a little bit more knowledge as to what actually happened. So I'd like to see both. I would like them to see, kind of like you're saying, Drew and Chris, like, you know, a few days later, or I would say a few months later. I think it benefits the reunion to that they have seen the show and see how they were edited and see how things came across. I think it makes a more compelling retrospection of the season. So it didn't play very well for me because like they don't know what's going on. They're just still in the same position and they're just kind of like, well, this kind of happened, I think. You know what I mean?
That's true. They haven't seen themselves on TV. They haven't seen how certain people reacted to certain things they did in the game. So they really are just in their little tunnel vision of what happened in the game at that point. Another thing that sort of came up watching Russell's take on this as well, and having
I've never agreed
reunion.
with Russell Hurst before until like today. I was like,
I find it interesting. Like I like hearing all the different takes, and one of the things that he brought up that I thought was an interesting one, which is true for the players, they're really missing out on having that live reunion show, going somewhere, getting together, having the after party. Like that was, in his opinion, the most fun in doing Survivor was interacting with fans outside of the game, going to party together, being able to let the game be and interact with people in their everyday life. And the event itself is gone, obviously, which took away for the players. They're never going to experience that, which so many players before them did. I think Winners at War, a lot of them were already parents and probably didn't care so much about it. They'd rather be at home and be in bed in time. But for a younger cast, they probably want to go out there and experience this. It's their first time playing the game. Now, lastly, I want to ask you, Chantelle, I know, Drew, you're kind of a little bit out for this, but we'll come back to you to finish off as well. On this one here, since you've watched the international seasons this year, you've watched Survivor South Africa, Immunity Island, Australian Survivor, Brains versus Brawn, and also this Survivor season 41. If you had to rank your favorite season for 2021, what would you say is your number 1, number 2, and number 3 season? And I'm letting you go first because I don't want to influence your decision-making and thinking here. But I really love the fact that you've watched all 3 of the international English-speaking versions of the show.
There's, like, without a doubt, my order is number 1, hands down, Brain versus Brawn, Australian Survivor. The final 2 was probably the best final 2 I've ever seen in any iteration of Survivor. Either of them being the winner, I would 100% be like, totally, you were the best player of this season. I thought that the season was amazing. Like, I can't even, like, I'm gushing about it because I was like, I was in it from day one. The gameplay for everybody, even pre-merge people, I was like, man, they played an amazing game. Oh my God, that was an amazing move. Like, they were playing moves, and something that the editors weren't afraid of was showing people talking about their game and the moves that they were making. And I find that with the American shows in general, that players are afraid to be completely candid and honest in their confessionals because they're worried that production is going to go in and screw up their game. So they're a little bit more tight-lipped about their strategy and what they're doing and how they're doing it. But these players were like, I'm the king, I'm the queen, this is what I'm doing. They're going to, like, they were just so full and so cocky and so arrogant and making such bold moves that I was like, two players were like my favorite two players of the season, and they were also the final two. I was like, I can't even believe it. I was saying, like, one of them was like the gift that keeps on giving this Christmas was one of these players. It was a phenomenal game. Then second, without a doubt, was Survivor South Africa. Before I saw, this new season 6 of Australia right now, I thought that was going to be a better season than Survivor 41. It was, but like, it doesn't match, in my opinion, to the gameplay that was showed on Australia. But I loved all the characters, all the people. I thought it was really fun. I was a little bit not let down, but the winner that I wanted to win didn't win. So that's probably why I don't rank it as high. But it was a fantastic season that I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed all the way. And it didn't even bother me that much that my favorite person to win didn't win the game. But like, Australia was like, oh my God, it was amazing. And then obviously third place was going to be Survivor 41. It didn't really do anything that the other two seasons did. They didn't use these players that have these amazing dynamic personalities to tell the story of gameplay, tell the story of Survivor. They didn't get them to do what is the most captivating about the game, in my opinion, is seeing these people interact with each other that really want to win $1 million or $500,000 or 50,000 rand or whatever it is. But like, they didn't utilize the characters in the same way. They didn't tell their stories in the same day. They didn't edit these people in a similar way that I cared about them, that I was like on the journey with them. And so I just don't know these characters as well as I know the characters in the other two seasons. So without a doubt, Survivor South Africa, Australia, Survivor South Africa, then Survivor 41.
So from what I can see in the live here, the few people that have watched them, they agree with you on the order with Australian Survivor, then Survivor South Africa, then the US for 2021. Me being from South Africa, I'm a little bit biased, and also being a very, very old school Survivor fan. I actually enjoyed Immunity Island the most. It was close. It's very tough to choose between Australia and Survivor South Africa because I love both franchises. Funny enough, if you ask me which one is the best franchise at this point, I feel like Australian Survivor has been the best franchise. This Survivor South Africa season was a very, very good Survivor South Africa season, which they've continued to build on it. They've continued to get better. Plus, myself and Riley, who's my co-host for Survivor Worldwide here on Reality Pop, we've also established a really good relationship with the executive producer, Leroux Buta, who's a great guy. He's come on to the show. He's been on for an interview. We've met and spoke to many Survivor South Africa players and also some of the Australian Survivor players. But I think that kind of puts our bias a little bit into really having enjoyed this Immunity Island season. It was the first season I ever did a live recap on it. And here's the great thing for those that are listening to it. I think Chantelle did a really good job at selling both seasons. I can't really add too much more to it, but it is also now on Paramount Plus, both of these seasons. So, if you're someone that's got Paramount Plus, you're following us, you're watching the Challenge All-Stars on Paramount Plus, go and have a look for both Australian Survivor. I believe it's from season 4 to 6. That's on Paramount Plus, and also the latest Survivor South Africa Immunity Island is on Paramount Plus. And the more people we can get watching this from the US, get some hype out there about these shows, the likelihood that we will one day see a US versus Australia versus South Africa Survivor season would be very, very likely. And I tell you what, there's some great characters. There's some great characters to be discovered. And I want to add, we've got the Queen of Survivor, Sandra Diaz-Twine, Drew, playing an Australian Survivor this upcoming season. We mentioned it to you previously. So the question to you here, Drew, is will we get you on one of these recap episodes to talk about Australian Survivor the new season? If I put you in touch with the right place to get it, will you come on and have a chat with us about Australian Survivor?
I mean, after how Chantelle was talking so highly about it, I mean, why not? I mean, I'm at that point where I don't have a ton going on right now. Like, I'm going to have a lot going on in the off season when it comes to my channel, doing like 3 to 5 videos a week. But I'm looking for seasons of shows that I haven't seen before. I haven't seen like a billion times in a row. And the way everybody is talking about Australia Survivor, I'm sold. I want to give it a try. I want to watch this season. I know you guys have been
season
talking.
6, like start like now and just watch it for the next week, because I just need to know if I'm just like biased because I just watched it, or because I'm obsessed with the winners, or like the final.
Oh no, it's highly rated. People loving it. So you've got Adrian here saying as well, I kind of knew that the person was going to win, but the final 2, in my opinion, was one of the best in not only in Australia but Survivor history as well. So, and it is true, because you went into that like you could have easily have made a case, and and it was. People were 50-50 on who they thought should have won that season for very good reasons, because it's kind of the closest thing I could think of was Yule going up against Aussie. Yule and Aussie for me, the first time I watched it, now as a more mature viewer of the show that have grown up and I'm not a kid anymore watching it. I was a big Yule fan back then. I'm an even bigger Yule fan now, and we've also seen Aussie go back. And I haven't had the opportunity to say this. I think Xander is this generation's Aussie. I'll put the hot take out there. I think if he ever goes back, he'll never get where he got in this first season again, because he's just going to be too much of a threat. But I think that Yule versus Aussie was that kind of finale where a lot of people would have felt good back in the day, regardless of which one of those 2 people would have won the show. And this is very similar for me in that regard as well. Drew, you're the challenge expert here. Before we wrap it up, we're getting into 2 hours, so I want to wrap it up. We are a challenge podcast. We talk about the challenge all the time. Who is the players from this season, if you had to choose, let's say 2 players that you'd like to see make it over to the challenge? And Chantelle, you can do that afterwards as well, and I'll give my 2.
It's very interesting to, I mean, I'm going to say JD just because I want to see him in everything. And I would just like to see how, how erratic he would be in the challenge house, and see, because I think he would actually do well on the challenge. I think he would feel better, especially if he can have like a Wes or Bananas like pushing him, or having him like somebody bring him into the fold instead of just throwing him into the eliminations like we saw in this past season. Ah, man.
Who was that player? Who was that player that did the crunches? Did the little crunches, and they were doing like their workout? Yeah, would he be like him?
I don't think so. I think having the Survivor sticker on you goes way further than America's Got Talent. Let's just say that. It's really difficult. Like, I don't know if I really want to see anybody else, or really can see anybody else making the transition from this season onto the challenge season. So I'm gonna stick with JD, and if anybody else can think of anybody else, that would be, I'll back them up.
I kind of want to see Shan. I feel as like it's such a pressure cooker that like I want to see if she'll end up popping off, or like what kind of like how she's going to maneuver in that kind of environment. I think it would be entertaining because she does have the ability to gain a lot of friends and allies. And so I'm wondering though, if like she gets duped and someone throws her in, if she's going to like, how she would react would be very entertaining, I think. So I think I'd like to see Shan. Of course, I'd like to see JD. I guess I could see Xander, but I don't know how much he would necessarily bring other than like maybe be decent at challenges. But I wasn't that big of a Xander fan, unfortunately. But yeah, I think Shan is who I'd like to see the most.
I'll say Liana as well. I think she could do. I think she's smart. I think Liana. She worked really hard in the physical aspects of the game. I thought she could do really well.
I think Liana, in my mind, between the two, between Shan and Liana, if we're talking about those 2, Liana is the one that physically I think would do better than Chantelle. Chantelle would be good from a strategic point.
So many bad strategic decisions that like I think that
we like to see that on the challenge. We love to see all the messy gameplay, you know, like make it fun, like, you know, bring her over. As long as she doesn't make a list on day 1, she's okay. You know, she'll do better than Michaela if she doesn't make that list on day 1 and get caught. For me, you know, Xander comes to mind. He's someone I think that could transition over to the show and do reasonably well. He's a bit too young for me at this point. I'd like to see Xander at least put 6 years on him, like maybe get to 26 or 27 before he makes a transition over to the challenge. Someone that I'm surprised nobody else has mentioned, just from a physicality standpoint, Danny, I think, would be interesting on the challenge as well, to see how he would do if he was to ever get the opportunity. Actually, having been an NFL athlete, go up against someone that didn't quite make it in Fessy, maybe taking him out on a hall brawl or something like that would be interesting to see. But I think Danny could be good. There was a lot of entertaining characters this season. Like, I could see Ricard being entertaining on the show, Liana, Sean. There's a few people there that I wouldn't mind seeing, but I do think that there are probably people from other shows that I would want to see other seasons of Survivor even more so. I think someone had mentioned it on the chat here, and I kind of missing it now, but Wendell comes to mind. Like, I really want to see Wendell make a transition over. I don't know if
last season. I feel like he
was in talks apparently, but Wendell, I feel like he's also found some success outside of Survivor now with his own DIY show that he's got in America. So I don't know if he's actually going to be willing to make the jump over to the challenge anymore. But I think Wendell would be someone that would be good. Chris Noble would be funny to see on something like the challenge as well. I think he would fit in pretty well. Quite a character. I'd love to see him. And who was the guy? Already forgot his name, that made his way over from the circle. Would love to see them go into a rap together, like a rap battle or something. I think that would be funny as hell. Ed, there you go. Ed and Chris Noble for a rap battle on the next season of the challenge. But guys, it's been great talking to you. We've done 2 hours of this. It flew by. We had a lot of opinions and a lot of things that we needed to get off our chest after watching this whole season. But I think it's probably a good time to call it for the day. Thank you to everybody that's been on the live stream, very active, asking questions. It's been great to have you guys here with us, and hopefully we can start making this a yearly thing where we do a bit of a review of Survivor after the season in the future with this group as well. Drew and Chantelle, we will be back on Friday evening on 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk about all things the challenge. Is there anything else that you guys want to plug or talk about before then? Drew, anything from your end? What are you getting up to for the week?
For the week is just Friday, our talk, and then also my own review and recap of the Challenge All-Stars episode 8 that's coming out. I'm taking this week pretty light to get ahead into the new year, trying to do 3 to 5 videos a week. So I'm trying to get ahead of schedule, and then and just taking some time to reflect on the past year and getting my head ready for the new year.
And watch all of Australian Survivor Season 6, Brains versus Raw.
And watching Australia Survivor.
Chantelle, what do you have coming up until Friday?
Oh, other than hanging out with you guys, I don't have anything specific lined up yet. So I will put a post in the YouTube community and on Facebook and Instagram regarding whether or not I do a cast reveal for The Amazing Race. So that's the only thing that might come up, and then maybe doing some challenge content on Wednesday, but that's not confirmed yet. It's holiday season. People are visiting family. People are, just doing all the different types of things. So definitely not sure. So just keep your eyes on, subscribe, and then you'll know what's going on. If you ring that little notification bell, you'll kind of know when I'm up to something new.
Definitely subscribe to Reality Realness with 3 S's, Reality Pop, and also the Angel Cake channel here on YouTube if you want to keep up to date with everything that we're doing. Thanks, guys, for being in the live. We will be back on Friday to talk about All-Stars and also the reunion show for Challenge 37. So that will be great to talk to you guys then.
Oh, yeah.
See you later. Thanks for being here. Bye.